time to go through your morning papers. We're joined by the former advisor to Nick Clegg and chief executive of Demos think tank, Polly Mackenzie, and she's joined by former Conservative Red Wall advisor, Oscar Reddrop. Welcome back. Good to have you back in the studio. Polly, let's start with the front of the eye. I mean, to be fair, it's on the front of pretty much all of the papers this morning, and this is the out-of-court settlement between Prince Andrew and Virginia Giuffre.
There's absolutely pages and pages of this, lots of details on the insides of the papers. We don't actually know how much money in total is being settled here. Some of the papers are talking about £12 million, some are talking about £10 million. We don't know where the money is coming from. Is the Queen putting her hand into her pocket? Does that count as public funds, private funds? What is the nature of the royal family's wealth?
So many questions.
So many questions. But fundamentally, I think it is clear that Prince Andrew's role in our public life is coming to an end. This settlement has been agreed with the support and encouragement of the Queen and Prince Charles, obviously the senior members of the royal family, partly to prevent this ongoing scandal and a potential court trial that would have happened, overshadowing the Queen's Jubilee year. So Virginia Giuffre is not allowed to speak in public about this until after those Jubilee celebrations. And it absolutely, I think, just dismisses everything that Prince Andrew said over the course of this about never having met her, not remembering any of it, not being able to sweat and spending more time than we would have expected in Pizza Express.
And how his lawyers attacked her as well. But here's the bit that really interests me. Prince Andrew pledges to demonstrate his regret for his association with Epstein by supporting the fight against the evils of sex trafficking and by supporting its victims. Now, there's no admission of guilt. There's no admission that he took part in any of this. How does that sit with you, and how would it sit with organisations who represent abuse victims if he turns up at a fundraising dinner or he has a golf day to raise money for them or whatever? How does that sit?
I think it's very difficult to imagine that abuse victims or survivors would want him there, especially as he's not admitting guilt. You know, it's one thing to accept that you have made mistakes and you have done things wrongly and then to ask for forgiveness and to move on and be a campaigner. I think the reality is Prince Andrew's not going to be a public campaigner for anything. If he is referring to behind-the-scenes work, you know, it's suggested that quite a lot of this money will be going to Virginia Giuffre's charity, then, of course, that is to be supported and encouraged. But there's something kind of distasteful about this, even though he's not, we don't have any sort of firm evidence about his particular behaviour. I think the best thing for Prince Andrew to do is lead a quiet and private life as much as he can.
And do you think that the questions about where this money come from are legitimate questions, Oscar, given that the royal family are paid by taxpayers a sovereign grant every year, and it seems as though, at least given the vast sums we're talking about...
He has the chalet in Switzerland,
which is mortgaged, isn't it?
I think it is a legitimate question. Personally, it's not one I'm hugely interested in. Do
you think the taxpayers have a reason to be worried about that?
I think the majority, yes, but at the same time, I think the majority of taxpayers, I'd imagine, kind of echoing some of Polly's thoughts there, want the guy to disappear and actually and enjoy, a platinum jubilee year. And if that's a relatively small price to pay, then so be it. Again, that interview that we saw a couple of years ago with, I can't sweat, and just the absolute almost kind of there's a real. There's a naivety mixed with arrogance there in that interview, and I've just been done with the guy ever since, personally. I think, as I said, if we were to want to cut through it all and just speak very bluntly, 12 million quid's a lot of money to give someone that you claimed you didn't really know or meet, and I think that's all I have to really say on it.
We'll leave that at that.
Yeah,
then.
absolutely.
Oscar, you've chosen the story that's also made its way onto some of the broadsheet front pages. This is on the front of the Times. This is the ongoing situation with Russia. President Biden saying he's sceptical about whether or not the threat has really dissipated.
I think that is a call that Biden has got right. I think the UK were actually, much better out the blocks on this. I think there was a mixture of diplomacy, and I think we've been pretty firm actually, and we are absolutely right to do so. This is a really, really acute and dangerous moment. And those political commentators and experts out there who share the view that, well, if he really wanted to invade, and this wasn't, kind of a posturing thing, he would have done it by now. That's a hugely dangerous mistake, I think, to make. If we actually think about what's going on here, it is really, really skillful. And again, taking all the emotion and the moral stuff out of it and the rights and wrongs, skillful politicking from Putin here. These mixed messages, that's complete deliberate. He's leaving people in a real state of confusion, and he is preying upon a not particularly consistent message in Europe, and he's also preying upon, I personally think, a pretty weak US right now.
Yeah. Polly, let's talk about Africa now, and this is in the Eye, and this is a story, page 15 in the Eye newspaper. EU binning jabs that don't make their way then to Africa. Africa misses out on this sort of vaccine poverty that exists.
Well, across the Europe, countries bought way more jabs than they needed. Because, we needed to kind of hedge our bets. The UK actually was very forward-leaning in buying jabs before they were even proven to secure the supply chain. But what we have failed to do is get those jabs before they expire.
Sell by date.
Exactly, to other countries who could use them. And that kind of vaccine nationalism is harmful from a moral perspective because there are still people around the world who are vulnerable, who are dying in much greater numbers than we are. But it's also, from a pragmatic perspective, a mistake because we know that Omicron emerged in South Africa, and though it didn't turn out to be as bad as we feared, nevertheless, it had a huge impact on every country in terms of the health protection measures, the fear, the concern. We are not safe from COVID until everyone is safe. Yes. And if we cannot find ways to more successfully vaccinate the world, we will remain at risk from this.
Well, it would just be a terrible thing to think that there may be millions of these jabs ready to go in a bin somewhere when they could have been used in the third world.
It's heartbreaking. It's only, 15 months, less than, since that first jab. I remember it was on my birthday in 2020, so December the 8th. Absolute, just joy and extraordinary sense that finally we could move on from this. But because we have failed to be really systematic about getting jabs to the world, the risk continues and people are still dying all around the world from this.
Omicron was only not as bad as it could be because most of us are triple jabbed. That's not the case in Africa. OK.
Thank you both very much indeed. You're going to be back in an hour's time. We'll have more stories, and very interesting to know that you're a Sagittarian like me.
All the best people are.
All the best people. You're just... Do you know what? I was about to say that myself. It's modesty. I think modesty is one of my great talents.
One of your many virtues.
One of my many. And I just thought, I just can't say that.
No, well, lucky you didn't need to.